In that moment, they were neither monk nor penitent, neither brother nor parishioner, just a man and a woman who loved one another. It was a pure love that seemed to slip beyond the neat fences of the world's rules and taboos. Hello, my name is Hannah Lee, and I'm 43. I live alone with my 8-year-old son, Ethan. 5 years after my divorce, I've been running a small art studio in the city. Ethan and I decided to spend 3 days at a Catholic monastery tucked away in the hills. As the bus wound up the mountain road, watching the countryside blur past the window, memories from 7 years earlier unfurled inside me. Back then I was 36 and desperate for a child. Repeated attempts at fertility treatment had failed, 3 rounds that took everything I had, and this monastery had felt like the last place to which I could turn. My husband blamed me. His mother had made no secret of her disappointment, saying I hadn't lived up to the house's expectations. I had come here broken, praying every night, tears tracking down my face. Please, I begged into the dark, just give me one child. Mom, did I really come from here? Ethan asked now, clutching my sleeve. Yes, Mommy prayed here with all her heart, and somehow you were sent to me. Wow, then this place is a magic monastery, he said, eyes wide. I smiled at his innocent certainty. It had felt like magic. After those prayers, I conceived, and Ethan was born, a tiny, fierce answer to the loneliness that had hollowed me out. But the happiness didn't last. When Ethan turned 2, my husband's affair came to light, and the house turned into a battleground. We shouted, we hurled words we could never take back. Fearing how much Ethan would suffer, I filed for divorce. For the next few years, I supported our small family with the studio. Late nights, early mornings, the careful economy of one income and one child. Now Ethan was starting elementary school next year, and I wanted to make a new memory for us, so we came back to the monastery for 3 days. I closed the studio for the short time and let the city fall away. As the bus climbed higher, the air grew clean and thin. The hum of traffic faded to a distant, forgettable murmur, and my own chest finally quieted. Ethan kept pressing his face to the window, asking about fields and stone fences and the big blue of the sky. When we reached the monastery, it was a little past 2 in the afternoon. We passed through an old wooden gate into the stone courtyard. The place smelled of wax and wet stone. Everything looked the same, the nave with its high stained glass and the small chapel where I had once knelt through long nights. The memories crashed over me, raw and bright. Wow, Mom, this place is gorgeous, Ethan breathed. I was staring at the carved doorway when a voice called behind me. Excuse me, are you Hannah Lee? I turned. A monk stood there, sun on his tonsure, smiling as if nothing had changed. For a moment I didn't place him until he stepped forward and said, I'm Brother Gabriel. We met 7 years ago. This is where you prayed for a child back then. My heart flipped. Of course, I remembered him now. The quiet man who had come and spoken to me in the chapel the night I could not stop crying, the one who had put his hand lightly on my shoulder and said things that steadied me. 7 years later, his smile still held the same compassion. His eyes were warm and steady. Oh, Brother Gabriel, it's been so long, I managed. It seems your prayers were answered, he said, bending to look at Ethan. He's a beautiful boy. Then, unexpectedly, Ethan shouted, Daddy! And darted toward Brother Gabriel as if pulled by a tether. Panic tightened my stomach and I snatched the boy's arm. Ethan, this is a monk. He's not Daddy. My cheeks burned at the attention of the others, but Brother Gabriel only laughed softly, unfazed. That's all right. Children sometimes call strangers names when they feel a kindred warmth. It happens, he said. He knelt, coming down to Ethan's level and folded his hands gently. Hello, Ethan, I'm Brother Gabriel. Let's enjoy our time here together. Hello, brother, Ethan answered politely. Relief slid through me, and looking at Gabriel, at the easy way he smiled, the natural gentleness he offered children, I felt something strange and warming in my chest. Later that evening at the refectory, we were reminded that monastery meals were to be taken in silence and gratitude. The long tables smelled of warm bread and broth. Ethan pushed his spoon at the simple fare, thick vegetable soup, boiled greens, and plain bread, then suddenly burst into tears. "Mom, I don't like this. I want chicken." I felt every head turn. Mortified, I bent to soothe him when Brother Gabriel stepped quietly to my side. From somewhere, a habit, a small kindness, he produced a simple cloth pouch and opened it. Inside were tiny shortbread cookies and a few homemade jam tarts. "These are for Ethan," he said softly. "Only for a good boy." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Good boys eat their soup and then get treats," Gabriel teased, and the child obediently took a few spoonfuls of soup, sneaking cookie crumbs into his mouth like a conspirator. Watching them, I felt a gratitude so hot it pricked at my eyes. This man had thought of a mother's worry before I'd had to voice it. That night, after tucking Ethan into the narrow cot, I walked the cloister alone. The sky was stitched with stars I rarely saw in the city. From somewhere came the deep, sonorous toll of the monastery bell and the faint echo of evening psalms, dum-dum, slow and steady, soothing something that had been jagged inside me for years. I thought of the night 7 years ago, how his words then, "Your earnest heart will be heard," had felt like a rope thrown to me in a storm. At 5 the next morning, the bell woke the place with a penetrating, resonant dong that carried through the stone. Ethan was still asleep, so I slipped into the chapel where a handful of worshippers had already gathered. The chant folded into the air, familiar and strange at once, and I found my attention drawn again and again to Brother Gabriel's voice as he led the office. There was a quality to it, rich and calm, that made my throat ache with an unexpected tenderness. His profile, lit by flickering candles, struck me as if it were a painting. The steady line of his mouth, the way his hands folded with ritual precision. Why did my heart catch? 7 years ago, I had been too raw with grief to notice such things. Now, the smallest details of him lodged in my thoughts. After the office, the brothers performed a long period of prayer and bowed repetitions, kneeling, rising, kneeling again, what they called their penitential practice. Gabriel's explanation in a low voice touched me. Each bowed moment, he said, was an offering, a small dropping away of worldly burdens. "Take it slowly," he advised before we began. "Let your mind empty itself." I began dutifully, but with each genuflection his image bobbed forward in my mind. The way he had smiled at Ethan over the cookies, the warmth in his gaze when he greeted me. By the 50th bow my legs screamed. I had never been athletic, and the repetition took more out of me than I anticipated. Around the 70th, a dizzy blur rose up and the chapel swam. As I swayed, a strong, warm hand steadied my arm. "Take your time," Gabriel said. His touch grounded me. For the first time in years, since the days when I had clutched at any kindness, someone's warmth felt like a refuge. Our eyes met. His concern was real, my pulse kicked hard and awkwardly. "I'm fine, really," I lied. He smiled, gentle, and the tenderness of his voice, the low lilt, made the room feel small and hot around my ribs. At lunchtime, I took the mountain path alone to walk off the clammy aftermath of the chapel. Ethan was playing with other children in the courtyard. The hush of pines and the faint rustle of leaves felt restorative, but my head spun with the previous hour's collisions of feeling. For 5 years I had kept men at bay, too busy, too wounded. Yet here, in less than a day, something like longing had crept up on me. Halfway along the path I saw him, Gabriel walking at an even, unhurried pace. He hailed me with a small wave. "Taking a walk?" he asked. "Yes, Ethan is playing. I wanted to sound ordinary." "The air clears my head," he said. "This path does that for me." We fell into step. We started with the expected things, the history of the monastery, a mention of the stone crosses and the gnarled apple tree. Then our conversation slid patient and easy into more personal territory. I found myself telling him about the divorce, the fights that had shredded our home, the decision to leave because the shouting was worse than the staying. "That must have been hard," he said, not with the shallowness of sympathy, but with an ache that mirrored my own. "I'm sorry." It was. But we're okay now. Ethan and I were all right, and the studio keeps me busy. I surprised myself with how readily I spoke. There was something about him that made confession natural. "You work in art." His eyes warmed. "Yes, small studio, teaching kids. It's practical, not glamorous." "Do you have formal training?" he asked, a hint of curiosity. I went to an art school in New York. It felt like a lifetime ago. A New York art school, he brightened. I studied sculpture in New York before I took vows. My breath caught. You did sculpture? Yes, I worked on figure pieces. But the life of an artist, balancing honest work with making a living, became complicated. I knew that struggle well, wanting to make pure work but needing rent and food and a child's sneakers. It was startling and oddly comforting to find a man who had walked the same tightrope. We traded memories of teachers and studios, and the small, shared language of people who knew how the wrong clay or the wrong glaze could feel like a personal failing. As the afternoon waned, Gabriel knocked on our door. "Ethan, can you come out for a minute? I have something for you." He handed Ethan a small paper bag filled with bright wooden beads and a spool of thread. "Make a rosary," he suggested, with the simplicity of a teacher offering a craft. Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor and threaded the beads with rapt concentration. Watching him, my heart squeezed with an ache I couldn't name. Gabriel's eyes on my son were soft and fatherly, so ordinary a sight that for a moment I thought, if only he weren't a monk. "Thank you for this," I said. "For children, joy and simple play are the roots of learning," he answered. "Force breeds resistance. Curiosity breeds life." I admired his thoughtfulness. In those shared small moments, bits of craft, shared stories about teachers, we created the illusion of a little family. The warmth felt like balm on an old bruise. That night I couldn't sleep. The courtyard was wrapped in a cold, clear darkness. I sat on a bench and looked at a sky crowded with unfamiliar stars. The wind made the pines whisper, and far off in the chapel, a lantern's flame flickered tap-tap, like a tiny metronome. "You can't sleep," came his voice. He sat beside me, not too close, not too far. The air between us thrummed with an intimacy that felt dangerous and sweet all at once. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 17 years, he said. 17 years, I repeated. "Haven't you regretted it?" He sighed, a long, soft exhale. "At first I was sure. The discipline, the silence, it was peace. Lately, though there are questions, I sometimes wonder what a different life would have looked like. The ordinary family, the small joys, those things sometimes come into my thoughts." I felt the answer rise to my lips in one raw syllable. "I know, ordinary happiness is harder than it looks. I thought I'd have the whole world once I was married. Instead, I ended up alone. But Ethan, he's everything. Still, there are nights when the stillness is heavy." His voice was quiet. I know that heaviness, strangely so. Shameful for a man who has taken vows, perhaps, but true. We sat together without speaking, and the silence between us was not empty but full of mutual recognition. After a long moment, he asked, "Would you like some tea?" It was late, past 11, but it felt as though the night wanted to be longer. We crept back to our small room and brewed tea in whispering motions. The steam rose and smelled of herbs and warmth. We sat with the little lamp casting soft circles of light over our hands. There was a new tension in the air, an almost electric stillness. His fingers brushed mine when he reached for his cup. The contact jolted me like a small current. He covered my hand with both of his, and for a long time we just stayed like that, letting the moment lengthen until it felt larger than anything we had known. "Hannah," he said at last, voice husky. "Yes." Would you come into the next room with me?" My heart sounded thunderous in my ears. We moved as if on a shared script, careful not to wake Ethan. The corridor was empty, moonlight pooled across worn flagstones. The door closed with a small, decisive click. Inside the spare adjacent room, under the diffuse wash of moonlight through the window, we acknowledged, wordlessly, what we both had been feeling. 17 years of silence and vows met 5 years of a solitary mother's endurance. There was fear in it. There was an urgency that made breath short. "This isn't right," he whispered, voice trembling. "I don't think we'll regret it," I said, though my voice trembled too. He told me then his true name, Daniel Cross, the name he had been called in the world before he became Brother Gabriel. It felt strange and intimate to speak it. When I said it aloud, Daniel, something shifted, as if the robe that had set him apart had peeled away and left only the man. He untied the simple knots of his habit slowly, with the careful hands of a sculptor unwrapping a precious mold. Each free knot seemed to strip away years of abstention and practice. We moved as if we were learning again how one human body fit against another, slowly and with reverence. His touch had the careful exactitude of an artist, as if he were detailing a clay form with considerate, sure fingers. In the hush after, wrapped in each other's arms, I asked, "What will happen now?" He ran a thumb against my temple. "I don't know, but I have no regrets." "I don't either," I answered. You helped me find the woman I thought I'd lost." He looked at me with a soft, incredulous smile. "And you helped me find the man I buried when I took vows." We lay together as the night thinned. Outside, the wind made the trees sigh. Somewhere a frog gave a single, gauzy croak. Time felt suspended, fragile and perfect. The next morning was a study in ordinary awkwardness. Ethan woke bright and loud, unacquainted with the gravity of the grown-ups' decisions. At breakfast, I avoided Gabriel's eyes. He returned my greeting in clipped, steady tones. But the monastery keeps watchful ears. In the quiet corridors, something had shifted. A brother had seen something in the night patrol. The abbot's summons cut the air like a blade. "You and Brother Gabriel come to the chapel," someone said. Walking into the chapel with him by my side felt like stepping into a trial. The abbot sat with the other brothers arranged in a semicircle, faces carved of stone. His voice, when he spoke, was low and hard. "Brother Thomas witnessed something last night during his rounds. Is what he reports accurate?" There is no eloquence when truth is obvious. I simply bowed my head. The abbot's sentence was brief and inevitable. "You must leave at once." My lungs turned to gravel. When Gabriel looked at me, I saw apology and anguish in his eyes, the two things I had come to know as twin weights in those responsible, tethered faces. Outside, Ethan began to cry. My hands shook as I shoved clothes into a bag. We left with the small humiliations of whispered goodbyes and the hollow clack of footsteps. On the path to the road, I looked back, hopping to see Daniel, to say some absurd, small farewell. But the cloister was empty. For a long time after, I lived with the looped, recurring image of his head bowed in conference with the abbot. Back in the city, the 3 days felt like a dream that could not be wholly trusted. I reopened the studio, but the brushes felt foreign in my hand. Every mixture of paint seemed to hold an echo of him. Ethan kept asking, "When can we see Brother again?" And my chest tightened. Weeks slipped past with no news. I considered calling the monastery and then, at the last moment, folded my hand back. The thought of prying, of intruding on their discipline, felt like trespass. Nights were hardest. When Ethan slept and the apartment thinned to just the tiny sounds of pipes and the soft tick-tick of the clock, the memory of Daniel's touch would wash over me like a tide, sweet and impossible. One afternoon, mid-lesson, the studio door chimed ding. I glanced up, and there he stood, not in habit but in a plain coat, reins still beating on his shoulders. The breath left me in a rush. "Daniel," I said before I could stop myself. He smiled, a little shy, a little unmoored. "I had to see you." "Sorry, class is in session." My voice came out breathless as I told the students to pack up and leave. Once we were alone, the room felt both too small and exactly right. He sat down as if he belonged to the air of the place. "I came to say I left," he said simply. "You left," it felt like an accusation. "The monastery." "I gave up my vocation," he said. "I laid aside the habit." I imagined all the whispers that choice would have set loose in cloistered corridors. "Because of me?" I asked, almost too faint to hear. "Partly," he admitted. "It was never only one thing." I'd begun to question whether that life fulfilled me in the way I needed to be fulfilled. Meeting you helped answer that doubt. At that moment, Ethan barreled into the room, breathless and shining, and flung himself into Daniel's arms. "Daddy, why are you here?" he squealed, calling him Daddy as if the name had always fit. In the smallness of that embrace, the world tilted. I looked at them and felt something like permission stirring in the belly of my chest. "If you don't have anywhere to go," I said, steadier than I felt, "will you stay with us, for a while, until you decide?" His eyes filled. If you'll have me. Ethan likes you, and it's been lonely, I added. We can start without promises, we'll see. Okay, he whispered. Thank you, I'm so grateful. He moved into the spare room. At first everything was tentative, coffee cups left unwashed or left where the other might find them, little embarrassments around how to live together. But Ethan was undaunted. He sat in the doorway and watched Daniel arrange books and dust shelves with a calm, practiced thoroughness. It didn't take long for Daniel to find a rhythm in our house. He insisted on helping with chores, sweeping, folding, organizing the studio's chaotic drawers. His hands were deft and deliberate, the hands of someone accustomed to ritual and to care. A week later, a student asked about sculpture. Daniel hesitated only a moment before offering to help. With his arrival came the slow widening of the studio's program. A few students took to working with clay, more followed. He taught sculpture the way he taught everything, softly, with a steady sense of the larger whole. Sculpture isn't just shaping material, he told them one afternoon. It's about finding the life hidden within it.